Jack,
Yes.
we need to do something with your Zoom.
Okay. Seems like it's okay.
Because that, where it says your name there, that is your Band-Aid.
Two thousand twenty-four. And is, when I say Montana roll-offs, is it Montana or is it just empty? Just empty. Just empty, okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe we're having an issue with the audio.
Okay.
Real quick. I believe we are good now in transmitting audio.
Okay, very good. I will now take appearances of council. Please introduce yourself and who you represent. Applicant,
My name is Ali Garib and I represent MT Roll-Offs.
thank you. Protestant, ally,
Morning, Mr. Commissioner. My name is Aaron Nicholson. I'm with the Crowley Fleck Law Firm located here in Billings. I represent Allied Waste Services of North America, doing business as Republic.
and protestant, Mackenzie. Oh,
And I also have my co-counsel here, Lucas, who will also introduce himself.
very good,
Hey, good morning, Commissioners. Lucas Forcella, also with Crowley, representing Republic.
very good. And protestant, Mackenzie.
Morning, Your Honor. Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. My name is Tom Singer. I'm here representing with Holland Evans LC, here representing Mackenzie Disposal.
Very good, thank you. So recesses will occur at convenient times during the hearing. I will next ask for public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Is there any public comment online? Okay. Very good. So are there any informal questions from the parties before we begin the evidentiary hearing? Ms. Karen?
Mr. Chairman, is that how you prefer to be? Okay.
That's good.
Commissioner O'Donnell, one issue, we weren't able to reach an agreement, the parties, on division of time. I want to make sure that we get everything accomplished that each party wants to have heard. And so I would ask the commission to consider potentially going a little bit longer today and tomorrow so that we're not all through Friday evening at 6 o'clock. If that's possible. And that may not work with everybody's schedule, I understand that, but I just wanted to make the commission aware.
Thank you. For today, I would say that I have an immutable appointment, something that I'm chairing also at 5:30 today. So But I am available on Saturday. Just saying. Yeah. Okay, so as long as everybody is aware of the time constraints, and everybody wants to get all of their information in, whatever, I think that, we'll just ask people to be conservative, everyone. So we'll do that, so. Okay, so, we'll now move to the evidentiary hearing. Based on the parties' pre-hearing memorandums, there are a few items we should address. First, as I said, the time allocation, okay? So the last count, we had about 30 witnesses. Okay, so this will take a lot of time. The parties have each informed the commission that the following witnesses are requested to appear remotely. Brian West and Ryan Keeland for MT Rolos, Henrietta Bernard Ness for Allied, and Scott Catone for McCansky. Are there any objections to any of these witnesses appearing remotely? And are there any additions to witnesses appearing remotely? All right. Are there any accommodations for any witnesses?
Just the remote witnesses that we've already.
Very good, okay. Mr. Lefebvre?
Mr. Nicholson, Mr. Chairman, this is my name.
Oh,
That's all right, he was one of my partners as well, he's also.
oh, I see, okay.
We have one witness, we reached out to Ms. Garrett to request if the witness could appear today, so slightly out of order. The witness's name is Debbie Olson. We had inadvertently called her Debbie Rowland, but Ms. Garrett had no objection previously to this shipper witness appearing slightly out of order. She has a medical procedure tomorrow, and so she'll be unavailable all day tomorrow and also recuperating on Friday, so she's really only available today. We only expect her testimony to last 15 to 20 minutes max.
I see no problem with that, Ms. Garrett.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Mr. Singer?
Similarly, there's some witnesses we may need to call out of order on Thursday. But I think it will be during the time that Republic is presenting their case, and they've agreed that we can slip some people in, so similar kind of thing.
Okay, very good. Those requested accommodations are granted, that's not a problem. So let's address the admission of documents. The parties have filed pre-hearing memorandums identifying various documents they propose to admit into evidence. The commission did not receive any objections to these proposals. Additionally, staff or Allied informed the commission that the parties anticipate stipulating to the admission of exhibits, with the parties stipulate to the admission of any particular documents. Ms. Garrett.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe that at least from our perspective, the applicant perspective, if we have particular objections to documents, we would raise those when or if they are offered for admission into evidence. But I do believe many of these exhibits on all of our pre-hearing memorandums were similar. So we will likely have a lot of overlap, and there shouldn't be an excess amount of objections.
Mr. Dix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had previously pre-marked multiple documents marked for identification as exhibits and circulated them, provided copies to the witness table, court reporter, as well as your honors. And so I believe the parties will likely not have any real objections to the documents. They've already been pre-marked. And so what I envision is when the document is being introduced to the witness, the party who's using the document, after the foundation is laid, then the document could be introduced just like any other exhibit would be.
Okay. Mr. Singer.
We have no objections to any of the exhibits that are in that notebook.
Very good. attorneys discussing some of this may take a while. I mean, Mr. Chairman.
Sir. So, if I may, like, so, council, as I understand it, I'll give you a bit by way of background, that in PSC proceedings, we often just stipulate to the entry of exhibits beforehand to save time. But as I understand it from council today, you're gonna take document by document, just like you would regular court proceedings, is that correct?
That was my understanding.
Council,
We have no objection really either way, Mr. Chairperson,
be sure.
sorry. We have no objection either way on how to proceed. Frankly, really, we only have two objections to just a couple different documents. It would be the exhibits that have been pre-marked for identification as, I believe it's exhibit L and G would be the only exhibits that we would be objecting to. All the others we have no objection to.
Mr. Senator.
I'd like to say I have no objections to anything else. Something has come up. I mentioned it briefly this morning. We had a judge that wanted to set a hearing at 9 a.m. emergency hearing. It's going on now. I'm texting about it. They've asked if they could reset it for 4 p.m. Can I ask if the commission would take a 10-minute break at 4 p.m. so that I can participate in that? Would that be acceptable to everybody?
I think that's a reasonable accommodation.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest, we'll just proceed as if this were normal for proceeding. I think it would be expeditious if we just moved admission of all documents accepting L and G, was it?
Correct.
However,
And Commissioner Brown, I do have some concerns about, how documents, some of these documents get used or some of the responses get admitted. I think, during the lunch break, I can have a list of everything that I'm willing to stipulate to Commissioner Brown, thank you.
so what does that mean? We'll just proceed. Okay, we'll just proceed.
Are there any other formal pre-hearing matters that parties would like to bring to the commission's attention, such as other stipulations or evidentiary motions?
None from the applicant. Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Nichols,
None on behalf of Republic.
Mr. Singer.
None for Mackenzie.
Thank you. Let's proceed then to opening statements. Would applicant MT Roloffs like to make an opening statement? Please.
Would you prefer that I go?
Yes.
To my record?
Excuse me, one more. So when they are out there, they don't have. For the record, is that being reported? No, I
So
think
we,
it's-
we are picking it up over there. So that they can't hear the attorneys. We confirm that.
Great, okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that everything that you say from the attorney's table shows being on the recording. Please go ahead, Ms. Karen.
Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner Brown, Commission staff, thank you for taking time here today. Just because we're here to talk about trash for 3 days, doesn't mean that we can't do great things. In the words of Oscar the Grouch, it's a trash can, not a trash cannot. We've got an applicant here that can demonstrate fitness. You will hear testimony from John Behrens and Buckley Reynolds, the 2 managing members of MT Roloffs. They both have relevant experience in waste removal or have other relevant experience and background or both. You'll hear testimony about their equipment that they have ready to begin operations on day 1. You'll hear testimony about their financial resources and or access to credit and financing. You'll hear testimony that they fully intend to perform the proposed roll-off service throughout the proposed service area. You won't hear any testimony about illegal operations. Because there haven't been any by this applicant. And I don't believe there's any going to be alleged. These applicants can demonstrate public need for an additional roll-off service provider in the proposed service area. You'll hear testimony from shipper witnesses, including one of the managers of MT roll-offs, that there is public need in the proposed service area for at least one other roll-off service provider. You'll hear testimony from construction contractors and excavators that are told they will have to wait sometimes 3 to 4 weeks for delivery of a container. And you'll hear how that affects every other aspect of the work that they're doing and how much money it costs them. You'll hear testimony that the existing carriers are either unwilling or unable to meet the public need that exists. These delays in container delivery continue today. These providers still don't have enough containers to meet the need. Based on the testimony you'll hear, there's approximately 737 containers for this large, expansive proposed service area. You'll hear testimony that any harm to the existing carriers caused by the entry of empty roll-offs will not be contrary to the public interest. And this commission has said before that roll-off service is a niche service within the waste industry. And you'll hear that there is a need for a roll-off specific provider to actually address and tailor service to these customers' needs. In these kind of cases, these Class D cases, the commission is also permitted to consider competition. You'll hear testimony that competition with the existing carriers, Republic and McKenzie, will actually promote the public interest in this case. MT roll-off applications already forced the existing providers to take some baby steps towards trying to address the issues that will come up today. You're not going to hear testimony or see evidence that MT roll-off's plans to serve every roll-off customer who needs service on day one, because it's simply not possible. The facts will show that by specializing in one particular area of Class D waste with roll-off service, the MT roll-offs will start filling the gaps in the roll-off service that the existing providers who are focused on presumably providing reliable residential or commercial service are not able to adequately address at this time. And we ask that the commission approve MT roll-off's application for a Class D certificate of public convenience and necessity. Thank you.
At this time, I noticed that as you were talking, there's some feedback, or whatever, some ringing. Is that being carried over into the recording? It's rather bothersome now. It might be even more bothersome later on.
I can check this.
Okay.
All right, we're testing Alec Waste, making a statement now at this time.
Commissioners, if it's acceptable to the commission, we prefer to reserve our opening statement until the case machine.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise, McKenzie would prefer to reserve its open.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, you may now proceed with your case in chief.
We'll also call Mr. John Behrens to the stand.
Mr. Behrens, at this time, before you sit down, I would like all witnesses to please stand. All witnesses, would give the testimony, please stand. Raise your right hand, and I will swear you all in at once. You swear the testimony that you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? What do you do? I do. Thank you very much. And if I forget, please remind me of those witnesses who are hearing online to
through the same process. We want to make sure this is done exactly right. So proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Barron, can you state your name for the record and spell it for the court reporter?
John Ferentz, JonBerens.
And Mr. Barron, where do you live?
Shepherd, 4815 John Hogan Trail, Shepherd, Montana.
And how long have you lived in Shepherd?
38 years.
Have you lived anywhere else?
Boise, Idaho.
Boise. And what's your education background?
High school diploma and 2 years of college.
And what is your role at NT Roll-Offs?
Managing members.
And did you set up that entity?
Yes.
Have you ever owned your own business before this?
Nope.
What do you currently do for work?
I'm a construction superintendent for a large construction company.
And which one?
Top construction.
Compared to other constructions in the area, would you say Top is a large company or small?
Fairly large.
And how long have you been with Top?
14 years.
And what kinds of projects does Top do?
Excuse me, Ms. Garrett, would you take the microphone and bend it down towards you a little bit?
What kinds of projects does Top Construction do?
We do underground pipe and sewer storm drains, water mains, rehabs, stuff like that on buildings.
So moving a
All
lot,
over the state, actually.
you move a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
What is your title or position at Top Construction?
I'm a superintendent.
And what kind of duties does a superintendent have?
So I manage the day-to-day operations in the field. I manage employees, trucks, equipment, anything that has to do with construction in the field, I do it. So,
As part of your employment with Top, are you required to do safety training?
yes,
What kind of safety training?
I've got all the OSHAs, AMSHA. We do daily safety meetings every day, and then we do a large weekly one on Mondays. But
And why is safety training important for the work that you do?
it's one of the most dangerous professions out there. We're underground, deep, cave-ins, traffic. We pretty much deal with everything. Trucks.
Do you work around a lot of heavy equipment?
Yeah.
Have you worked as a superintendent the whole time that you've been with Top?
No. The last 8 years.
What other positions have you held with Top?
I was a operator and then a foreman. And then a superintendent.
And during your time at COP, you work on different projects throughout the proposed service area that we're talking about here today? Where?
Muscle Shell County, I've worked in Roundup. I've also worked in Muscle Shell. Carbon County, I'm currently doing one in Joliet. Columbus, I've worked in Columbus quite a few times. All over the place.
Ever had anything in Rygate and Golden Valley here?
Not personally, but we're currently working on a rural water project.
Do you believe that your work experience with COP is relevant to the proposed service that MT Roll-Offs will offer? How is it relevant?
Keeping a job site and the community clean really is the struggles that we deal with every day. Not being able to get roll-offs or stuff like that has been a challenge. I try and keep everything clean. The community looks at construction, they kind of look down on construction typically. We don't have a good image. We usually block streets. We do stuff like that. So when traffic piles up, the public looks at the contractor, not the situation. So keeping a good image with the community is huge in our profession. So not being able to provide the proper cleanup with removal of all my excess materials is a struggle. So I am currently using dump trucks, which is not cost effective. it's tough, but dealing with the situations that we've been dealing with in the past, I don't do that. So,
So you talked a little bit about this. In your role working for COP, are you ever responsible for getting roll-off service to job sites?
that is one of my main duties, yes,
And does COP ever haul its own construction waste?
yes.
And what companies have you used for roll-off service on COP projects?
Republic, McKinsey.
And how do you decide how many containers you need or what kind of service you're gonna need for that job site?
Well, it depends on the project, what we're gonna be generating. There's niche things, asbestos gets a special container. And then general construction waste gets a different container. So it just depends on what I'm doing, what kind of rehabilitation project I'm working on.
And in obtaining that roll-off service to a job site, have you experienced issues or problems getting that service or the service that you need?
Yes,
What kinds of specifically about Republic, what kinds of problems have you experienced?
tremendous delays in getting them. Getting a roll-off is extremely difficult. Once they give you a date, typically it gets pushed. On the rare occasion, it does show up early. Getting them removed is extremely difficult. I don't know how much I can say about that, but there's a lot of things that we haven't chose, but getting them removed is huge. Billing has been an extremely painful situation. We've been turned over to collection several times and the bill has been paid, so it's just a mess. But yeah, getting the roll-offs is tough. Getting them removed sometimes is even more difficult.
What about requesting an on-demand pickup? Have you had issues with that with Republic?
Yeah. So in the areas that I'm in, typically they're residential areas where I'm doing like a sewer rehab or a water rehab or something like that. People pile trash around those roll-offs. When they get full, I typically try and call before they're full to try and anticipate the delay. However, it doesn't always work. So then people pile trash around them, which then I have to, as the contractor, pay to clean up the mess, which then looks terrible in the community, right? People piling trash around the roll-off. I've had roll-offs sit for months, been trying to get them removed, and they're just, and typically I borrow property from landowners. I get lease agreements through work. So I'll put that roll-up on somebody's property and then people just pile trash around them because I can't get them removed on at a time to make it. So then my guys end up going and cleaning that up, which in turn costs my company, our company money. So that's where we're at.
And do you experience those same issues or problems with service, roll-off service from McKenzie as well, or are there different issues with that service?
Yes, the same issues. The difference with McKinsey versus Republic is McKinsey just tells you when we have one, we'll call. They don't give you a specific date. They just say, when we have a roll off, we'll call. And in my line of work, I can't just sit there. It doesn't work. Backtrack piles up, as you guys know. I can't stop a project because I roll off.
So when you do actually get a roll-up container delivered from either Republic or McKenzie and you can't get it picked up, does that create safety issues for the job site?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Trash blowing around the job site goes out into traffic. I've had cardboard boxes blowing around out in traffic and my guys are out there dodging cars and downtown buildings trying to get trash picked up. It's just never ending. You know, the wind blows down there. So it's not.
And these service issues with the roll-up containers, do those also cause project delays?
Yes.
And does that cost the company money or what are the issues with that?
Yeah, so when they're not picked up and there's trash that's piled up around them from the community, I'm left to clean that up. So typically I'll have to leave equipment behind, which if I can't leave equipment behind, then we will leave and then have to transport equipment back to the site to clean it up and personnel. in my line of work, there's somewhat of a schedule, but sometimes jobs start at a delayed time, so, or early. So I don't really have the luxury of waiting to move out of a project. It's all time sensitive, if you will. Yeah, so it does cost a lot of money to.
Do you, what have you done to try to address those issues, with the delays in container delivery or pickups?
I have contacted, there's some direct contacts through Republic that I've used. And it eases it a little bit, but there's been several instances where it just gets more frustrating because you keep telling them the same thing over and over and it never gets removed. Just takes.
Mr. Beers, so when you're requesting service from one of these companies, how far in advance are you typically making that request, or do you typically have a lot of lead time?
I try and do a week to 2 weeks. I don't have the luxury of that all the time because I don't, like I said, we typically sign a lease agreement with a landowner to stage equipment and materials and roll-offs. So it's all dependent on the landowner when I can move in and when I can't move in. So typically I have to work around that. I don't get much notice on that, so.
When does COP decide to haul their own waste, in what circumstances?
I'm gonna object. Is this witness testifying on behalf of COP Construction or his own individual knowledge? That really hasn't been made clear.
This is my own individual.
Response. And Commissioner Brown, this is my client's personal knowledge. He works for COP Construction. He's not testifying on behalf of COP Construction. He's testifying about his personal experience in his employment.
It seems to me, however, that being a superintendent for that company, that he is rightfully entitled by virtue of his experience and knowledge to speak on behalf of the company. So, overruled.
Can you tell me what the question was, please?
When does COP decide to haul their own waste and what circumstances?
So when I've exhausted all avenues, sometimes it's, I just don't have time to wait, so I will haul our trash. It's going on now, but
And is hauling their own trash, is that more cost effective?
no,
Why not?
because I have to pay a driver, the fuel and everything else. It's not cost effective at all for the project.
Mr. Behrens, what made you decide to pursue this Class D certificate?
For everything I've mentioned so far, it became extremely frustrating. I was working in a town and the city, we have project meetings every week, we have weekly progress meetings. And the engineers in the city were coming down on me and they could not get a roll. I was explaining to them, I was calling and calling and calling. I've exhausted all my avenues. I didn't have a truck available through work. So it was piling up in a parking lot and blowing around the community. And I was racking my brain, how can we figure this out? So that's when I decided to start looking into doing this on my own. I was purely looking to get like a couple roll-offs and try and move trash on my own.
And how did you learn about this application process?
Luckily, I was on my way back from the bank and an ex-employee of Republic that I know called me and said, "Hey,
Objection, hearsay.
He's recounting, as I recall, in answer to the question, how he first heard. He's not referring to what he heard, but that he did hear. I think that's a reasonable thing, so overruled.
I received a phone call from an ex-employee of Republic and he informed me of the number. I had made several phone calls and had quite honestly looked like a fool. I had no idea what I was doing. I called the landfill I had called the county commissioner. I had called all sorts of people and nobody, even the landfill said, I don't need anything, they just need 90 roll-offs so I could start hauling up there. So I was quite lucky when I found out about the number, because I was gonna start doing things illegally unbeknownst to myself. So that's when I halted all things going forward that way. Then I concentrated on getting the PCN number. So that I was not breaking. That's not our intent.
You mentioned an ex-Republican employee, who is that?
Robert Emmons.
Okay. And how do you know Mr. Evans?
Years ago, Robert Emmons, when I first became a superintendent for COP, he hired on at COP Construction as a truck driver. And he also is from the community I'm from, and his son and my son are great friends. We play ball, they play football together. They hang out at school. So I was talking to Robert at football practice, and that's how I found out. And he got this ball rolling. He was working for Republic at the time.
Mr. Behrens, did you register MT Roll-Offs LLC with the Secretary of State before filing your application?
Yes,
Do you recall when approximately you filed the application?
for the PCN. I believe it was in June of last year.
At that point, in June of 2023, what did you know about the process of applying to the commission for a certificate?
Very little. I had talked to Katie on the phone at the PSC, and she informed me that there was a possibility that I would need a lawyer. I did not even search out a lawyer until after I started getting letters, and I was completely caught off guard. So it was an eye-opener.
When you initially applied, did you have a truck at that point in time that you might have used? Did you have containers?
Nope.
Did MT Roll-Offs have employees at that point?
Nope.
What financial resources did you have when you filed the application?
Just my assets. That's it.
You still have those assets?
Yes.
Have you spent money on this application process?
Yeah.
Can you tell me approximately how much?
Right around 15,000.
Is that all to me?
Yes. And the publishing fees for putting in newspaper.
Does MT Roll-Offs currently own any assets,
No,
bank accounts?
no.
Why not?
There's no point in having any of that stuff until I have a number. I really can't proceed forward. I know it would be unethical for me to go out there and do what I'm proposing, what I'm asking to be able to do without having the proper number.
How do you plan to cover the costs associated with operating MT Roll-Offs?
Well, with the assets that I have, I've talked to a banker and taking out loans.
And who's the bank that you jumped?
Back June, he was a Stockman Bank banker. He was a branch manager. I can't remember.
Was it Mr. Hogley or was it someone else?
It was someone else.
Okay. That's good enough. If your assets run out, what other options do you have to get financing or loans?
Not really any. It's just me.
Do you have anyone else, a member of the LLC?
Oh, yeah, my partner Buckley.
I'm sorry, what was your partner's name?
Buckley Reynolds.
Is MT Roll-Offs currently providing any roll-off service to customers?
No.
Why not?
We have no number.
And is MT Roll-Offs advertising to provide such service?
No.
Last year, I guess, in June when you applied, did you get a quote for some containers?
I did.
Do you recall who you got this from?
I believe it was Waste Clip out of over by Denver.
I'd ask you to open the book here and turn to Exhibit C. MT Roll-Off page So we're looking at, the bid signal documents at the end of exhibit C that are marked MT rule 8 and 9. Do you recognize that document, Mr. Behrens?
Yes,
What is it?
that's a quote I got from Wasteco for some roll-offs.
Who's it from?
Wasteco. Tommy. Tap,
And who's it to?
John Barron's empty roll-offs.
And how many pages is that?
Pages.
And can you tell me the date that order was created?
6/8 of 2023.
Is there an expiration date on there?
Yes, 7/8.
Mr. Behrens, is that a true and accurate copy?
Mr. Burns, could you have a little louder on
Oh, yeah, the expiration date was 7/8 of 2023.
that? Thank you.
Is that Mr. Behrens, is that a true and accurate copy of the price quote you obtained from Waste Script and
Yes.
to rules? And Commissioner O'Donnell, at this time, I've moved admission of pages 8 and 9 of exhibit C.
We have no objection to the introduction of the entire exhibit, C, which would include the pages just referred to.
Thank you, Mr. Singer.
No objection here.
So,
Who is Tommy Gaffin, do you recall?
He was just a salesman that reached out to me after I contacted him online.
And did you speak with him directly?
I did.
And can you tell me what is the quoted price for each container?
The quoted price delivered was $6,027.
And what size container are those quotes for?
Yard.
what was that?
30 cubic yard.
And so what's the total for those 10 containers? What's the total on that?
$64,542.71.
Are you still planning to purchase containers from Waste Equip, or are you looking at other options?
We're looking at some other options.
And how, approximately the same price or different price?
Yeah, roughly the same price.
How will MG roll-offs pay for those?
Combination of loans and money.
Did your employer COP Construction encourage you to apply for this Class T certificate?
Absolutely not.
Have they assisted you in any manner throughout the process?
No.
Do you have to take leave time to be here today?
Yes.
If your application is unsuccessful, what will you do?
I'm still gonna work for Kyle.
If the application for MG roll-offs is successful, will you continue to work for COP?
Yes.
Will you also work for MG roll-offs?
Yes.
What will you do for MG roll-offs, do you know?
I'm gonna do day-to-day operations and manage the business with my partner.
If the commission approves the application for a Class D certificate, will MG roll-offs transfer that certificate?
I'm sorry.
If the commission grants the application for a Class D certificate, what do you plan to do with that?
And it'll definitely be an empty roll-off's name and it'll just, that'll be the businesses.
You don't plan on selling it?
Oh, no.
How do you know, Buckley Reynolds?
Lifelong friends. I think he moved into our community in '93 and we've been friends ever since.
When did you decide to bring Mr. Reynolds on to MG roll-offs?
We were discussing a form of partnership from the time I applied. Um. I don't know how it really came to, it was just, something it's bigger than one person can take on, and we both agreed on that, so we wanted to take it on together. He had equipment, there was some requests that we had equipment. And I was not going to go purchase equipment to just provide evidence that I had equipment if I don't have the number. So it worked in both of our favors that way.
You mentioned Mr. Reynolds owns some equipment. Do you know what equipment he owns?
He owns a roll-off truck and 5 roll-offs.
And will that equipment, to your knowledge, be available to NG roll-offs?
Yes.
Why not have Mr. Reynolds transfer ownership of that equipment now?
We have no number. We can't provide a service until we're legally able to.
If the application is successful, do you plan to acquire more trucks?
Yes,
When?
when there's a need, so. It's just, we're gonna grow the business as the business wants to grow. It's not gonna be a forced thing. I mean, if we require more trucks, we're trying to fill a void that's in the community right now. It's gonna determine on how many trucks the community calls for, really, how many people lost.
Do you plan to acquire additional containers as well?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many or when?
We've discussed possibly 50 containers to start with and see where it goes from there.
How will NT roll-offs decide what rates to charge customers for roll-off service?
So we're going to bill on a case by case basis, distance, needs, quantities, what the customer, it's gonna be customer based really. We're not gonna set a rate that'll be, this is how much you're getting charged. It's just gonna be a customer by customer, tailored to their needs, basically.
With the equipment that you will have on startup, will you be able to serve every roll-off customer seeking service?
No.
How will you decide which customers to serve?
It'll be a first come, first served basis.
Initially, where will NG roll-offs operate from?
So right now we have a yard on, it's 4230 Shepherd Acton Road out in Shepherd. It's I think 15 to 20 acre lot with some outbuildings on it, shop.
How many employees do you think NG roll-offs will have initially?
It's hard to say, 5 to 10.
What about, how many drivers?
That'll depend.
Objection, speculation.
And Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner Brown, he's talking about his business plan, and so obviously it's going to be speculation. Their NG roll-offs is not operating currently. It's his testimony about what they will do and what they plan to do.
I agree. The question is trying to determine to flesh out what the witness said earlier. It seems to me that he would have enough equipment and employees as demand. So because you don't know what the demand is, everything has to be speculative at this point. So it seems to me that that's allowed.
So that's how we're gonna. The employees will depend on how many trucks we need, what the community demands.
Are you planning to hire Robert Emmons, the former Republic driver that you're, no? Did you make a promise to Mr. Emmons that you would hire him or anything like that?
No,
How will NG roll-offs decide what to pay its employees?
we're going to base our pay scale on the going rates around Billings, Montana and surrounding areas.
Will NG roll-offs offer roll-off services different from those offered by Republic and Kenzie?
What was that again, sorry?
Will NG roll-offs offer roll-off services different from those currently offered by Republic and Kenzie?
Yes,
how will those services be different?
We're going to try and tailor to the customer's needs. We're trying to recycle as much as possible off the job sites. Currently, a lot of the stuff that I throw in a roll off just goes to the landfill. And I think we can, there's a lot of metals and stuff that come out of the ground that we can really recycle. So we're gonna try and tailor our business to that. Ultimately, that's kind of where we want to go with it, is recycling as it becomes available. Can't recycle everything, obviously, but technology's getting better all the time.
What facility does Energy Vault plan to use for disposal?
The building's landfill.
And will empty roll-offs offer containers for recycling materials?
Yes,
And where will those recycled materials go?
to local facilities and buildings.
Now, we've talked a little bit about some of your plans. Do you have a written business plan?
Yes.
And is that something that you've,
It's rough. We haven't really finalized anything there yet, so.
Excuse me, can't hear.
Oh, we haven't really finalized anything there yet, so
is that changing on a day-to-day basis?
yes.
And does entry roll-offs plan to advertise for its services?
Yes.
Well, how will it advertise?
Online, how we can afford to. It's gonna be using the containers, they'll have our name inside of it, and hopefully word of mouth will be huge. But mostly online probably.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Cross-contaminated.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Mr. Behrens. Morning. Mr. Behrens, like I said in the introduction, my name is Aaron Nicholson. I'm an attorney here in Billings. I represent the Republic. Mr. Behrens, you were the sole original member of Montana Roll-Offs, correct?
Not Montana roll-offs, MT roll-offs.
MT Roll-Offs.
Yes. Montana roll-offs is a completely different entity, nothing to do with me.
Okay, so there's actually a separate entity called Montana Roll-Offs?
I believe there was. I don't know that he ever registered his name. I tried looking it up because I had mine in first and then it showed up, so.
Okay. Well, you'll have to correct me when I call you Montana Roll-Offs, since I probably do it inadvertently. So
That's okay.
okay. So to be clear, you were the sole original member of MT Roll-Offs?
Yep.
And you also filed the articles of organization with Montana Secretary of State on behalf of MT Roll-Offs, correct? All right, if I could have you take a look at that exhibit C, please. Before you. And in particular, look at the articles of organization that were filed with it. It's the base number MT Roll 1. It looks like this is the official document. Right. That is, there it is. There. All right. You've seen this document before?
Yep.
And you were the one who filled this information out?
Yes.
And you filled this information out with the Secretary of State on June 14th, 2023, correct?
Yes.
And in this document, it lists the business purpose, correct? And in this document, the purpose was listed as recycling.
Correct.
You did not list construction waste disposal, correct?
No.
When you filled this information out, you swore under penalty of law that the facts contained in this document were true, correct?
That's correct.
You also filled out the application for certificate of public convenience and necessity on behalf of MT Roll-Offs, correct?
Yep.
All right, if I could have you please take a look at what's been previously marked as Exhibit A in the binder in front of you, sir.
Ms. Garrett, for facility purposes, if he's having trouble finding something, you're much more familiar then you may serve them up on you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll help as best I can to, not trying to all kind of ball or anything here.
I'm just. Query, what binder are you looking at? What's the front of that say?
Alvin Waste Services of North America exhibits objective.
All right, thank you.
And those were the documents that we provided, prior to the hearing. And so looking at exhibit A, you recognize that document?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen that document before?
Yep.
And in fact, Mr. Barron, you were the one who filled this information out on this form, correct?
That's correct.
And you filled this information out with your signature on June 9th, 2023, correct?
That's correct.
In this document, it identifies business structure at paragraph number 3 on the very first page. Correct?
Yep.
And in that, you circled entity as LLC, correct?
Yeah.
And it says indicate where entities registered. You inserted Montana in handwriting, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you filled out this application, you had actually not formally formed MT roll-offs yet, had you?
I was in the process of that. Yeah.
So this application was filled out on June 9th, 2023, and then about 5 days later, then you submitted the articles of organization to the Montana Secretary of State, right?
Right.
Time that this application for certificate of public convenience and necessity was filed and ultimately received on June 20th by the Public Service Commission, Montana roll-ups had never previously had any sort of certificate of public convenience and necessity, correct?
No.
And you personally did not have a certificate of public convenience and necessity, correct?
Right.
At the time that you could submit this application to the Public Service Commission, you did not have any written contracts with any shippers to ship construction waste or debris, correct?
No.
And likewise, at the time that this application was submitted, MT roll-offs also did not have any written contracts for the disposal of construction waste and debris, correct?
No.
Okay. Not sorry. And at the time that you submitted this application, you personally did not own any roll-off trucks, correct?
That is correct.
And you personally, likewise, at the time this application was filed, you didn't own any dump trucks, correct?
Nope.
At the time that you filed this application, you personally did not own any dumpsters either, correct?
That is correct.
And at the time that this application was filed, MT roll-offs did not own any containers either, correct?
That is correct.
At the time that this application was filed, MT roll-offs didn't have any equipment whatsoever, correct?
That is correct.
And at the time this application was filed, MT roll-offs didn't have any money either, correct?
That is correct.
At the time this application was filed, MT roll-offs didn't have any assets whatsoever.
Nope. Yeah, you're correct.
MT roll-offs didn't own any bank accounts.
Nope.
Didn't have any insurance at this time.
No.
And likewise, MT roll-offs didn't have any employees at this time either, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In looking at this application, there was a couple affidavits that were filed with it. One of the affidavits was from a gentleman, Alan Holmes, Big Sky Lawn and Snow.
Yep.
You know Mr. Holmes, correct?
Yes.
Will you tell me which page you was going to?
Yeah, it's the exhibit A, it's the second to last page, the affidavit from Alan Holmes, Big Sky Lawn and Snow.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland.
You're welcome, sir. And do you see the document that I'm referring to? Okay. You know Mr. Holmes, correct?
I do know him. Yes.
Mr. Holmes is also an employee at Cop Construction.
Yes, he is.
And Mr. Holmes has worked at Cop Construction coming up on 3 years, starting in June of this year, correct?
That is correct.
Lack of foundation.
He just testified that, yes, and they both work together.
Yes, but Mr. Nicholson suggested that a time frame that has not been testified to.
He just testified that he did work there for 3 years, starting in June.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's fair that he could be testifying to his own personal knowledge. Is that,
That's my personal knowledge.
okay, yeah, thank you.
And so, Mr. Holmes, you worked there coming up on 3 years in June, correct? And you worked at Cobb Construction over 14 years, correct? That is correct. And so you worked as a superintendent as well at Cobb.
That's correct.
And you were also worked as a supervisor, correct?
That is correct.
And so as a supervisor, you had the ability to control and direct his work, correct?
Yes.
And so you asked him if he would file an affidavit in support of MT Roll-Off's application, correct?
I did not ask him to fill out this.
He did it on his own volition without you talking to him?
I talked to him about what I was doing, and he brought up the facts that he had issues.
And filled out an application, or excuse me, he signed an affidavit.
I made him aware.
Hold on just a second, we gotta talk one at a time though.
Yes, when I made him aware of this application, and he volunteered on his own to fill it out, yes.
You provided him with a blank affidavit document?
Absolutely. I did provide him, yes, after he asked for it.
Okay. Mr. Burns, you talked about partnering up with Mr. Buckley Reynolds. You and Mr. Buckley Reynolds have known each other since the 1990s, it sounds like, correct? You both grew up in Shepherd? I want to have you take a look at what's been previously marked for identification as Exhibit D, the application. Or excuse me, in the 3-ring binder in front of you, you see that? Okay, and then if I can have you turn to the second to last page in that Exhibit D. And it will be a document that looks like this, which is the Montana Secretary of State Certificate of Fact. And the record, I'm referring to the big document based over MT roll 0000. Right? Do you see this document before, sir?
Yes.
And this is a certificate of fact from the Montana Secretary of State for MT roll-offs, correct?
That's correct.
And this was a document that you provided in your data responses for discovery purposes?
Yes.
Okay, and this is a true and accurate copy of the Montana Secretary of State's certificate of fact for MT roll-offs?
Yes, it is.
This time move to admit what has been marked as Exhibit D. Mr. Chairman?
No
Objections?
No objection.
No objection, so.
And so looking at the history detail of this certificate of fact, which is kind of at the bottom of the page. MT roll-offs filed articles of amendment with the Montana Secretary of State on January 9th, 2024, correct?
Yes.
And as part of that amendment, Mr. Buckley Reynolds was added as a member to that LLC, correct?
That is correct.
The business purpose did not change though, did it?
No,
The business purpose still listed recycling, correct?
that's correct.
MT Roll-Offs LLC is owned 51% by you, right?
Correct.
And the remaining 49% membership interest is owned by Mr. Buckley Reynolds.
That's correct.
There are no other members to MT Roll-Offs.
No.
MT Roll-Offs does not have a written operating agreement in place, does it?
Not at this time.
And there's no written agreement between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining how MT Roll-Offs is to be managed, correct?
That is correct.
And there is no written agreement in place between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining how to make financial decisions concerning the business, correct?
That is correct.
There is no written agreement between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining how capital contributions into the company are to be made, correct?
That is correct.
Similarly, there is no written agreement between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining how distributions from the company are to be made. Correct?
Correct.
Similarly, there is no written agreement between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining how liabilities or debts are to be paid from the company, correct?
That is correct.
And so ultimately, there is no written agreement between you and Mr. Reynolds outlining what is to happen in the event of a business disagreement between the two of you, correct?
That's correct.
You said on your direct testimony, your direct exam testimony, that MT Rolos has a business plan. However, it is correct that Montana Rolos does not have, MT Rolos does not have a written business plan in place as of this moment, correct?
That's correct.
So when you testified on direct examination that you did have a written business plan, that was inaccurate or working. Okay, so you don't have.
It's in process, but that's what, I'm sorry, we do not have one in place. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So it is correct that you do not have a written business plan in place.
That's right.
MT Rolos has not conducted any analysis of its expected profit margin for the proposed Class D certificate, correct? Okay, and Mr. Barron, you are not an economist, correct?
That's correct.
And so you have no formal training in finances, correct?
That's correct.
And so you have not conducted any financial analysis into what your business impact would have, what impact your business would have on the existing garbage hauling market in the surrounding 5 counties, correct?
That's correct.
So to date, MT Roll-Offs does not have any garbage hauling experience. I'm talking about MT Roll-Offs, not you personally or Mr. Reynolds.
MT Roll-Offs has no experience. It's just a name at this point. So we get a number. And then we go.
And you will not be hauling a roll-off truck, correct?
I will not be driving a truck.
Driving. Yeah. I thought I'm gonna say
I
driving.
carry one, but we could try.
As you testified, you currently work for Cop Construction.
Yep.
In your plan, can you continue working for Cop Construction? Currently, Mr. Buckley Reynolds is the only employee for MT Roll-Offs, correct?
Yeah, object, there's no employee without two roll-offs.
Yeah, and nobody stated that they stated or they have no employees.
Okay, because there is some written discovery that says there is a single employee named Buckley Reynolds. But if that's a testimony, there's no employees, that's okay.
I would love to see that.
Oh, okay. If we could turn to exhibit C. That's what I'm thinking of. If there is no employee, problem. The actually the exhibit is D. I apologize, I said C earlier. And if we could turn to page 4. Mr. Barron, do you recognize exhibit D, correct?
Yep.
And exhibit D is a true and accurate copy of MT Roll-Off's first supplemental responses to Republic's data request, correct?
Yep.
And then looking at page 4, and the question, actually, the question starts on page 3, but it says AWS 3 employees. A, list all employees of MT Roll-Offs and state the positions held by each employee.
Yep.
And then turning to the next page, the Montana MT Roll-Offs first supplemental response to section A says, A, Buckley Reynolds, managing member. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, your written discovery responses do state that Mr. Buckley Reynolds is an employee, correct?
states that he's a managing member, and so I'm going to object because it doesn't represent the testimony that's already on the record.
Well, either way,
Well, as I read the information, the list, A on page 3 was list all employees and state the positions held by each employee. And that the supplemental response in number A says Michael Reynolds, so that's the correct answer to identifying Mr. Reynolds as an employee and his managing partner as his position. It seems to me clear with that, but they.
And Commissioner O'Donnell, just note, the initial response also had identified the John Behrens as the owner.
Correct.
Managing member. So if we're referring to employees in the sense that this question is asking, that it's Mr. Behrens and Mr. Reynolds, that's it. Nobody's getting to that.
Mr. Chairman. We have a witness on the stand who can answer the questions. Council doesn't need to be answering questions. You can ask the witness what witness can answer. But please do not testify on behalf of your client. Scared. Thank you.
and so in the event that the Class D certificate is approved for empty roll-offs, the plan is for Mr. Buckley Reynolds to provide the driving services to haul garbage.
No, we will hire an employee.
Okay, and you currently don't have any employees other than Buckley Reynolds?
He is a non-paid employee, yes, apparently.
Okay. And so the plan is that he's not actually gonna be doing any work for MT roll-offs then?
No, he's a managing member. We're gonna manage the business together, him and I.
And, oh, sorry, it's no, and when you say manage the business, does that include having him drive roll-off trucks?
If necessary. He does have a CDL and yes, he's capable of driving the truck, so if there was a need for a driver, he would definitely step in. He easily said that, so.
Montana Roll-Offs has not received any written employment applications from any prospective employees yet, have they?
I don't know, I can't speak for Montana Roll-Offs, I can speak to MT though.
I apologize, that's okay. I'll probably do it again, is that part of it? So, but MT Roll-Offs has not received any written employment applications from any prospective employees to date, correct? And MT Roll-Offs has not conducted any background checks on any prospective employees, correct?
That is correct.
And MT Roll-Offs does not have a written safety policy in place, correct?
That is correct.
And MT Roll-Offs does not have any sort of employment handbook in place, correct?
That is correct.
And MT Roll-Offs does not have any safety training program in place, correct?
That is correct.
MT Roll-Offs does not have any workers' compensation insurance, correct?
That is correct.
Doesn't have any sort of commercial general liability policy in place.
That's correct.
MT Roll-Offs does not have any vehicle insurance in place, correct?
That's right.
Doesn't have any insurance whatsoever, correct?
That's correct. As I stated before.
And I didn't ask the question, so, in your testimony, you testified, I believe that you had contributed about $15,000 so far to MT Roll-Offs, correct?
Yep.
You recall in your written discovery responses that you identified that you have not made any financial investments or other contributions to MT Roll-Offs.
That's correct.
And Mr. Buckley Reynolds has not made any financial investments or contributions to MT Roll-Offs either, correct?
That's correct.
And currently, MT Roll-Offs does not own any property whatsoever.
That's correct.
MT Roll-Offs initially expects to use Overtime Enterprise Incorporated's dump truck, which is a 2008 International Workstar 7500, correct?
That is correct.
And that is a dump truck that is owned by a separate company, correct?
It's not a dump truck. It's a roll-off truck.
Oh, truck. It's a hook truck, is what it's called?
That's what it's called, yeah.
Okay, because the discovery is that it's a dump truck.
Well, it's a hook truck, so that's what it is. It's not a dump truck.
We call it a roll-off truck.
Yeah, you can call a hook truck, hook roll-off truck
So that roll-off truck is owned by Overtime Enterprises Incorporated, correct?
at this time, correct?
And there is no lease agreement between Overtime Enterprises and MT Roll-Offs to use this truck, correct?
That is correct.
There is no equipment use agreement for Overtime Enterprises Inc. and MT Roll-Offs for the use of this truck, correct?
That is correct.
And there's no bill of sale transferring title to this truck from Overtime Enterprises to MT Roll-Offs, correct?
That is correct.
And Overtime Enterprises uses this truck, correct?
Yeah,
And so if Overtime Enterprises is using this truck, that means that MT Roll-Offs prospective customers will have to wait for overtime to be done using the truck, correct?
not correct.
So if overtime is using the truck, that means that MT Roll-Offs is not using the truck, correct?
Montana roll-offs will be providing service for that company. When we get that, no, if we get the number.
And there is no written contract of any sort between Overtime Enterprises and MT Roll-Offs, correct?
That's correct.
Similarly, the plan is also to use Overtime's disposal containers, correct?
Yep.
Ownership of those disposal containers has not been transferred from Overtime to MT Roll-Offs, correct?
That is correct.
And so if Overtime is using those containers, that means that MT Roll-Off is not using those containers, correct?
They will, well, that is correct.
During examination testimony, you would talk a little bit about a proposed quote for roll-off containers. Do you recall that?
A proposed, yeah.
And so the proposed quote was for about $64,000, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that quote expired back in July of 2023, correct?
That is correct.
And you haven't provided any additional quotes that are more recent in time, correct?
We got another quotes, but we didn't provide them.
And that prior quote for $64,000, MT Roll-Offs doesn't have any money whatsoever, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so it doesn't have the money to buy those proposed containers, correct?
Technically, yeah, correct.
You talked a little bit about recycling, and we could take a look at your exhibit, or at the exhibit A. And the document right after the signature page for the application, there was an email. And you recognize that email? And that was an email that you sent the Public Service Commission staff on or about June 29th, 2023, correct?
Yep.
And I'm just gonna ask you about some of it. States, quote, "We are going to look for opportunities to recycle and reuse certain construction and demolition materials in order to reduce the amount of waste going into our landfills." Did I read that portion correctly?
That's correct.
And then the second, or the last sentence to that paragraph states, quote, "While we will be looking for opportunities to recycle and reuse, not all collection sites will generate sustainable materials, so the landfill will still need to be utilized." Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
So the plan is for MT Roll-Offs to recycle materials, correct?
That is correct.
And the process of shifting through refuse and garbage and trying to collect recyclable materials, that takes time, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so your main complaint, from what I can tell, is that there are alleged delays with the existing carriers. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the process of going through and trying to shift through recyclable materials and garbage will take additional time, correct?
No, that's not correct.
That doesn't take any time to go through and shift through garbage. Please just let me finish my question, sir. I apologize too. Is your testimony that it does not take any additional time to sift through
recyclable material from garbage.
Yes,
That's your testimony?
we're gonna provide other containers, multiple containers. That's what I spoke to when I said we'll tailor the job to the customer. If a customer has no recyclable needs, they will get one roll off and it'll go, if it's not recyclable, it will leave and go to the landfill. If they have recyclable needs, we're gonna provide them with the correct containers to separate as they go. It's much easier for them to separate it. I do it all the time.
And in your experience, you have seen where the general public can throw away items that should not be recycled into recycling bins, correct?
Absolutely.
And so that does take additional time to sort through, correct?
Actually, no. You can take it to the recycling centers and they clean it up for you. They don't charge us for it.
And looking through again your application. Your testimony is based on your personal observations, correct?
That's correct.
And you are not testifying today as a duly authorized representative of COP Construction, correct?
That is correct.
And so you personally, you've lived in Shepherd and Boise, correct?
That's correct.
You have never lived in Carbon County?
Nope.
You've never lived in Stillwater County?
No,
And I've never lived in Golden Valley County, correct?
not that I'm aware of.
Maybe when you were a baby or something?
Who knows?
Yeah.
You never know.
And you've never lived in Muscle Shell County either, correct?
No.
Okay. And you have never personally requested roll-off services for any of those counties, correct? For your own personal use?
Oh, no, not for my personal use, no. Yellowstone County I have, but it's not.
And you were aware that in Yellowstone County, or excuse me, in the city of Billings provides roll-off services as well, correct?
That's right.
And in your application, you provided no written documentation of written complaints to Republic for alleged delays. Correct.
No written complaints to Republic for delays?
Yes, there is not a single email or written letter or document
That's correct.
complaining about delays to Republic, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Barron, thank you for your time. I have no further questions at this time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. Commissioner? Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tom Singer. I represent Mackenzie Disposal.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Gonna try not to be repetitive. I'm gonna try to cover a couple of things. You talked about, starting with 50 containers.
Yes,
That's gonna cost you 5 times as much as the 10 containers that you gotta do, right?
that's true.
So we're talking about $300,000 plus dollars.
Yeah.
Are they all gonna be 30-yard containers?
Haven't decided yet, but yes, probably 30.
And when you're, providing a couple of those to a customer because they can recycle, does that mean you have to provide different containers for bricks and a different container for steel and a different container for wood, or you just put all of those recyclable materials together?
Oh, we'll provide different containers for different uses, yes.
Okay, so if somebody's got a project where they've got 3 different kinds of recyclable materials and then garbage as well, you'd have 4 different containers on that side.
Well, 2 to 3, yeah, depending on what the customer's needs are, that is correct.
You already set any kind of time limit on how long the customer can keep a container?
No.
And, you're gonna have one truck, at least to start.
Yep.
That's also gonna be serving, overtime enterprises customers as well.
No,
So it's gonna become
truck that belongs to empty roll
That
off.
is correct.
So is Overtime Enterprises shutting down?
No.
Buy a new truck, do you have any idea how that comes?
We're gonna provide the service to them as on a first come, first served basis.
So they will be your first customer, so to speak.
Who knows?
But you're expecting them to be one of your customers.
And I'm gonna object, Mr. Reynolds can talk about Overtime Enterprises, Mr. Barron has no knowledge about Overtime Enterprises operations.
Seems to be reasonable, sustainable.
Do you have any knowledge about Overtime Enterprise operations? Okay. But you understand that MP roll-offs will be providing a truck to Overtime Enterprises if requested.
If we have containers available and they request it, yes, they will get service.
Okay. The permit that you applied for, as amended, there was an amendment made, do you recall that? Yeah. If you look at Exhibit B. And so look in front of you. That's a motion to amend your complaint, correct?
Yeah.
You remember seeing this?
So a lot of these.
Stuff is so fun.
It's a lot.
And behind the application, there's also as part of the same exhibit, there's an order that granted that motion for the company. Do you see that?
Sure. Yeah.
I want you to look at the motion to amend this, go back a little stage two, and not to the front. Quote to you the language that the requested amendment, the language. And before I do that, let me move to admit Exhibit B.
I have
No objection.
Bringing up the legislative things. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. So that is submitted.
Thank you. The amended application that has been approved by order says Montana MT roll-offs seeks a Class E certificate of public convenience and necessity authorizing transportation of construction waste and debris. Paren, quote, C and D, close, quote, close paren, from construction sites utilizing roll-off containers in Yellowstone, Carbon, Stillwater, Muscle Shell, and Golden Valley counties to a lawful disposal site. Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
And there's a couple of points that I want to focus on there. You're talking about transporting just construction waste and debris, correct?
That's correct.
So there's no interest here in hauling any kind of residential or commercial garbage in using roll-off containers. Some of these got a house that they need to clean up because parents died. You're not going to provide services to them to help clean up the home.
Depends on if they're remodeling or whatever, then it would be construction, so, but no, we're not.
And are you assuming the construction work will go on year round?
We all know Montana.
That's not really the answer to me.
Well, the answer to your question is weather provided. Yes, construction will go year round.
Okay, some years they can't because the weather doesn't permit, right?
There's months where we can't work, yes.
And then you end by saying a lawful disposal site. What do you mean by lawful disposal site?
A lawful landfill.
Is a recycling center a lawful disposal site?
I believe so. I can't speak to the legalities of it, but I believe they're legal because they're being done. So I would say it's legal to drop there.
That's your understanding of this application. And do you know if recycling centers are licensed by the state in the same way the landfills are?
No, they are not.
And do you know if the Department of Environmental Quality does any kind of licensing of recycling centers?
I don't believe so.
Also in Exhibit B, there's some language that I want to discuss with you. It's the next block quote, I believe there, but it's just a portion of it. Sentence that starts, construction waste and debris is a niche service of garbage collection. Do you see that sentence?
Yep.
Reading from there, due to the unique and changing circumstances of construction job sites, these shippers need a roll-off provider with a quick response time, flexible scheduling, and an ability to adapt to individual shipper needs. That's your basic business model, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Now, if we look at Exhibit C, that's when the next tab in the notebook is in front of you, Exhibit C. And I'd like you to look at page 4 and review responses there. There's a paragraph, letter D, small d. Did you find it? What you say there is MT Roll-Offs expects to haul construction waste and debris for as many customers in each county identified in its application as time, equipment, and resources will allow. Are you talking about the company's time, resources, and equipment there? MT Roll-Offs, time, equipment, and resources?
Yes.
Isn't that exactly what the current providers are doing? Providing construction waste and debris services as time, equipment, and resources allow?
I would say so.
And so it's I'm sorry,
That's why I applied.
you think that their resources and time and equipment are insufficient?
Absolutely.
Have you made any effort to see how many total roll-off containers are in service from the city of Billings, Republic, and Mackenzie?
I have a rough number between McKinsey and Republic,
What's that number?
700 and some change. I can't remember exact numbers, but
Have you looked at the city of Billings numbers at all?
I have.
You're aware that the city of Billings provides roll-off container service within the city?
Yeah, very limited.
Well, okay. If I told you that it looks like it's over 200, would that surprise you?
No,
So what's the demand? In your view, I understand you're not an expert, what's your opinion about the total demand for containers that exists in the area you intend to serve?
and be more specific. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Like, how many containers would service this area?
That's what I'm asking you.
I have no idea.
Just
I think it changes day to day. I mean, there's construction sites that open every day, and there's no way of knowing that exact number.
Are there times when the demand is far less than the 900 or so containers that are out there already?
Yes, there is.
And that would mean that during those times, some number of those containers would be idle,
That's correct.
have to be stored, and deteriorate during the time that they're not used, correct?
I don't know about deteriorate, but sure.
have you looked at all at what the peak demands are for containers and what the nadir of demands are to try to think about how that might affect MT roll-off's business plan?
I don't think there's any, no, the peak demand, I mean, when I'm not at their call centers, I don't know how many phone calls they're getting and turning away, there's no way to determine that.
And you haven't hired anybody to try to figure that out?
I know.
Is COP Construction able to serve all the customers who call asking for its services at all times?
No.
And so the current employer has to make decisions about who will get served first and so on and so forth.
That's correct. We have healthy competition out there. There's a lot of construction companies, more than two. I can tell you that.
More than three as well. And the city is also a competitor here, correct?
The city's competitor and there's more than three contractors in Billings,
Understood.
which drives down prices and keeps things reasonable. It keeps us in check, it keeps our competitors. in check.
Objection, lack of foundation.
I think it's answered the question.
Yeah,
It seems to me he's being responsive to the question. Mr. Singer, how do you?
I take no position, the commission can make whatever ruling it wishes.
It seems like, yeah, I appreciate the objection, but I'm gonna overrule it. Thank you.
can I continue? I think that healthy competition is what built this country. And I think everybody deserves competition.
Now, you're aware that there are limits to competition that are imposed by the government.
Mhm.
And this permit is an example of that.
Absolutely.
And whether you feel the way you do or not, the fact is that the legislature in Montana has established a way of governing whether people will be able to haul trash or not.
Absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Exactly. And the people who own those permits obtain them through a lawful process. It was expensive. You testified about the expense you incurred, correct? And those permits have a value to them.
I presume, yes.
So it's not surprising that they want to protect the value of an asset they own.
That's correct.
And in terms of competition, there isn't a level playing field out there among current competitors, is there?
Who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to Republic and McKenzie and the city of Billings.
There's not a level playing field?
Well, let me ask you this. Does the city of Billings pay the same taxes that Republic and McKenzie pay?
I have no idea.
Does the city of Billings impose restrictions that prevent McKenzie and Republic from providing some services within the city of Billings?
Yes.
Does the city of Billings charge itself landfill fees that the other carriers have to?
I can't speak to Billings' billing or financial state. I have no idea.
Okay. And so, those things would affect the way in which Republic and McKenzie have to compete if there are differences there, correct?
Sure.
And if MT Roll-Offs comes in with a different kind of service, that's going to be yet another not quite equal bit of competition.
Not quite equal. How is that? I'm confused on how it's not equal.
Let's
Elaborate.
let's go on. Do you
you've listed Bighorn County as one of the areas that you're gonna haul waste from.
No, I have.
You're right, Golden Valley you have listed.
That's correct.
Are you aware of restrictions of the Billings landfill bringing waste from Golden Valley County?
No, we'll get all those restrictions if we get the number.
So you haven't looked into that?
No,
I want to go back into history a little bit for a minute. When you have requested containers from Mackenzie, were you requesting them to fill them with dirt?
No.
With cardboard?
construction debris.
Would the construction debris include dirt?
No,
Would it include cardboard,
at points, yes,
paper,
yes.
steel?
Hmm. Not necessarily steel, no. Very limited. I mean, yeah, there's gonna be some metals that are very, very small metals, staples, banding off a pipe, something like that, of that nature.
Have you ever requested a container from Mackenzie for just one day or a limited time? Are you aware that Mackenzie provides what they call temporary containers for a 2-week limited period?
No.
How much lead time have you, I think you testified that you try to do a week or 2 lead time. How much lead time do you give when you're contacting, say, porta potty providers for a construction site?
24 hours, 48 hours, maybe.
Do they ever tell you that they don't have any available? Have you ever had a supplier tell you that they didn't have the wood or steel or brick that you needed on the time frame that you wanted it?
Nope.
That never happened during the COVID pandemic period.
We may have had a few delays, but typically the engineers and stuff like that, the cities and the engineers that I work for, they buy stuff way in advance and put in anticipation for some of these projects that we were doing, especially during COVID because of the shortages. So they were anticipating the shortages. So we were very limited. I couldn't speak to specific shortages, but none of them really recollect.
So your position as superintendent doesn't involve purchasing supplies, construction supplies for the project?
No, they're usually pre-purchased for the project.
So you don't do that?
I buy materials on a day-to-day basis as things arise. So in my line of work, there's things that are unforeseen because it's underground. People don't know what it is. So if I need like an extra, you probably don't know what a curb stop is, but it's how they feed water to a house. So if I need another curb stop, I go grab that. That's my purchasing abilities. Very limited. I don't sign purchase agreements for pipe, materials, stuff like that. That's all done in advance. We generally don't start projects unless we have the materials on the ground to build the project.
Okay. Will you start a project if you don't have a roll-off container on site?
Sometimes I'm forced to.
And forced to in the sense that there's customer pressure to do it or
Absolutely. I have that.
and if you don't have the product you need on site, is that an excuse for not starting, not completing it on time?
Yeah, it's a huge ordeal. You gotta have change orders and everything else involved and stuff like that, for materials. Yeah.
So picking up the waste doesn't have the same priority as for having the product available.
Picking up waste, it holds a lot of weight, yes it does. Yeah, we contain it as best we can. And a lot of times if it's too bad, we haul it ourselves, which is not cost effective, obviously.
And you make a point I wanted to talk about, in addition to the 3 competitors that we've mentioned, there's like Overtime Enterprises my understanding is that they provided demolition services and have the truck and the containers they do because they do their own hauling from those demolition projects. Is that your
I
understanding?
didn't speak to that.
But you can speak to, contractors having having the opportunity to have their own hauling equipment and basically competing with McKenzie and Republic in the city by hauling the stuff themselves, and they don't need a permit for that, correct?
That's correct.
Will MT Roll-Off be employing a mechanic?
Yes.
And, if the truck breaks down, what's the plan?
At this point, we were gonna try and purchase another truck as a backup and always have a truck available.
And if all of your, containers are already on site and a customer calls and says, I need a container tomorrow, you're gonna say no?
Yeah,
And are you gonna say, we'll call you when there is one, or are you gonna tell them anything more?
well, it was, so that's how we're gonna try and build the business is figuring out the needs, and we're going to keep expanding as the need presents itself. Yeah, we're gonna have to tell people no. If it gets to that, we're trying to fill that void. We're hoping that we don't ever have to tell anybody no.
Think the folks at McKenzie feel the same way? If they never have to say no?
Absolutely. That's why I hope they would encourage us to do the same thing. Get the number and help them guys never have to say no, right? That's the whole point.
But in a market that's regulated, that kind of changes the calculation, doesn't it?
It does. I wish none of us had to say no.
Containers are too expensive to leave around idle.
Not really.
And having employees, sufficient numbers to get them moved on time from places as far away as Golden Valley County. One trip to go on Golden Valley is gonna take most of the day, correct?
Yep.
And so there's your truck and one of your containers, maybe two, because you got one on site, and you're switching out. You're gonna put a lot of resources into going to Golden Valley County.
Yep. We will charge accordingly.
And in the meantime, a customer calls and says, I need a container and I need it now, you're gonna have to say, no, our truck's not here.
We will schedule a date for them to get a container. A time.
Have you looked at, McKenzie's responses to data requests?
Which one?
Just in general, have you?
Yeah, I read through so many things, I can't keep track of all that time, but yes.
And did you make any attempt to evaluate the fluctuations in demand that McKenzie has dealt with over the past 2 years?
No, I believe there is fluctuation, I know that.
Is, have you been in the construction industry long enough to go through a slump?
Well,
And if we get another one of those, that's gonna be a significant drop in the demand for roll-up containers, isn't it?
that is correct.
And somehow or another, energy roll-offs is gonna have to survive when there's no demand for construction roll-off services.
Just like every other business, yes.
Do you have any idea how many containers the current permittees have purchased in the last 6 months or 2 years?
I have their finances now.
And if they've consistently been adding containers, does that matter to you?
Of course, it matters to me.
That's what you want them to do.
We want everybody to grow, yeah.
But growing in a way that's not healthy,
Right,
lets the company survive.
absolutely, but they're not meeting demands now, right?
Well, that's your story.
Yeah.
And anecdotes aren't data,
No,
right?
that's true.
It's, there's a certain bit of experience during certain periods of time when current providers were unable to meet demand in the past. You're predicting that that's the situation that's going to continue for the future.
I can't predict it.
Well, that's what the business plan is based on, is a prediction, correct?
That's correct.
And so at some level, you're trying to say, we're predicting that things that happened in the past are gonna happen again, even though the situation may have changed.
Yeah, so you see year after year after year, so you pretty much know what's gonna happen in the summer and fall and winter, we all go through the same things, so yeah. I mean, we predict what's gonna happen this summer is what happened last summer.
And so, I'm sorry, did you finish your answer?
Yes.
So the data actually shows that there aren't those predictable cycles like you're talking about. The people who are in this business can show that the demand is not cyclical in the way you're suggesting. Are you willing to accept that data as opposed to your general sense of what goes on?
I don't know, yeah, probably.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. We will, before we get to commissioners' questions and commission attorney questions, we'll take a 10-minute convenience break. Off the record. time for commissioner questions. Commissioner Brown, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, no questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Bukacek, are you with us? Questions, Commissioner Bukacek?
She's muted.
She's connected.
She's muted, I think.
Commissioner Bukacek, are you muted right now? Trying to speak right now. Yeah, let's proceed then, and I have no questions either, so any recross?
I do have somebody to.
Yeah, redirect, I'm sorry.
Mr. Barron, if you could turn to exhibit A, I just wanna make sure we. Correct facts on the record of that. There's a stamp there at the top by the commission. Can you tell me when that application was received by the commission?
June 20th, 2023.
And there's a note underneath that. Did you write that?
Yes,
You wrote that?
think my way. So
What's the note say?
completed 6/29. It's got up at the 2, but 23.
There was some conversation with Mr. Singer for Mackenzie disposal about the city of Billings being a competitor with the existing providers. Do you know if the city of Billings has to apply to the Public Service Commission?
Yes, they do not.
There was some conversation with Mr. Nicholson from the public about Mr. Holmes being a cop employee and you providing that at your time. Did you force anyone to sign an affidavit in support of that?
Absolutely not.
There were some questions about disposal and the city of Billings landfill. Are you aware of other lawful disposal sites in the proposed service area?
No,
Are there any transfer stations that you're aware of?
no,
And do you know whether recycling centers are regulated by the commission or
they are not.
are they regulated by you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Um. Are you aware of any illegal hauling operations in the proposed service area recently?
Yes.
Can you tell me about this?
I won't bring names, but there was a couple of them that were hauling. One has ceased, 2 of them have both ceased hauling now, and I don't know the reasons. But they reached out, one reached out to me and one reached out to my partner Buckley.
And those folks, were they doing roll-off service for other customers or for themselves or how?
Objection, this is beyond the scope of the original testimony.
And I believe there were some questions about equipment and whether or not there was people who just haul their own trash, construction, debris and waste for roll-off service. And so what I'm trying to establish is that there have been allegations of illegal operations by other people besides FT Lawson.
Is that explanation? That.
I think I believe it goes beyond the scope of the original testimony and certainly beyond the scope of the cross examinations and therefore shouldn't be allowed on redirect, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Garrett, would you be able to meet his objection by rephrasing your question?
I don't think so, Commissioner O'Donnell, I will move on. I'll just start that question. Going back to the, top employees, you indicated that you didn't force anyone to testify. Did you ask anyone to come testify?
Yes.
And will they be testifying?
No.
Why not?
We were directed not to.
Objection, hearsay, it's an out of court statement.
And I think we've already heard testimony that Mr. Behrens is a superintendent for COP. And the commission has previously ruled that he's entitled to speak about their position.
And our position is, again, this is unsworn testimony coming from other sources who are not testifying here. It's textbook hearsay.
Is the company position on other witnesses besides Mr. Behrens?
And the company is not testifying.
And again, the commission has already said that he can talk about his personal experience.
His personal knowledge, without speaking for the company as a supervisor, superintendent of the company, I think has certain knowledge of the operations of the company that he can speak truthfully and accurately for. Proceed.
So why aren't they coming to testify?
Out of fear of retaliation,
From who?
Republican.
What would happen if they came to testify and MTOS does not succeed in having their application granted? What are their concerns?
They're the only ones who remove.
I'm gonna make the same objection just one more time. These are out of court statements and they're hearsay.
I believe it's in his testimony in the record that he asked shippers to voluntarily come and testify. They withdrew their approval, their agreement to testify out of fear. So that is in the it's not pre-filed testimony. So what's the term?
It's the data.
In the data request. So it's been publicly stated at that time. And I think, in fact, this mirrors questions that of my own very strong concern as well. And I would like to hear the responses to this.
So to respond, Republic is the only one who hauls asbestos pipe in this area. And if they retaliate and tell us they can't haul asbestos pipe for top construction, then we would be in a lot of trouble. So there's just no way to get rid of it.
Is that something that COP can self-haul?
It costs, I think the drivers have to be trained. And
On hazardous materials?
yeah, and it has to be a lined container.
I'm sorry, what was your question? I didn't hear it.
It's on hazardous materials. I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you. Recross.
No, Mr.
No, thank you.
And say, let me take advantage of my position to ask a question to follow up on that. Are you personally aware of any instances of any retaliation or such actions by Republic or any other entity?
Not at this time.
Thank you. So this witness is excused, I believe. Okay. No problem. Just temporarily excused.
Okay.
Also, there was an issue of Exhibit C There was discussion of that 8 and 9 were admitted on that, but not the whole thing. Is it anybody's intention to have the whole exhibit C admitted?
We would like to have the entire exhibit introduced into evidence.
Or that's admitted then?
And I believe, was there another exhibit A that was also referred to? I don't believe I actually moved to admit exhibit A, but the witness testified to it. We would move at this time to introduce exhibit A into evidence.
Ms. Garrett?
I have no objection to that.
No objection.
So admitted. So. You have any other witnesses at this time?
I do.
Let me also mention, while she's prepared for that, in our discussion earlier about time here, we have, our agreement is that we need to be out of this facility at 5 o'clock each day. However, I think is we might be able to, if the need arises, if the feeling is such that we might start even earlier in the day. We have no latitude in the evening, but we do in the morning. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Ms. Karen?
I call Buckley Reynolds just to.
The court reporter here.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Evil, previously sworn.
Mr. Reynolds, will you state and spell your name for the court, please?
Buckley Reynolds, BUCKLEYREYNOLDS,
Where do you live, Mr. Reynolds?
in Shepherd,
And how long do you live there?
since 93,
And what's your educational background?
graduated high school,
And what's your role with MT roll-offs?
just a managing officer of a business.
What do you do for work currently?
I own and operate a excavation and trucking business,
What's it called?
Overtime Enterprises,
And how long have you been doing it?
since I started it in 2000.
Do you have any employees?
Yes,
How many?
3
And how do those employees get paid?
hourly.
And then what do your employees do?
Just daily operations between truck driving and excavation work.
What kinds of things does Overtime Enterprises do?
Every entity of construction that has to do with dirt, basically, from road building to digging foundations to septics to demoing houses.
Just move it back, would you move closer to the microphone?
Yes.
And what is your role with Overtime Enterprises?
President.
And do you also have a commercial driver's license?
Yes,
Is that a class A?
yes.
And what does that mean?
I drive heavy or operate a motor carrier vehicle that has air brakes and over 80,000 pounds.
Straight line vehicles
Yes,
and hitch trailers?
yes,
And how long have you had that commercial driver's license?
since I was 18.
Does Overtime Enterprises also have authority as an interstate motor carrier?
Yes,
And that's for hire?
yes.
How many drivers?
3, including myself.
And what kind of things does Overtime Enterprises haul?
Mostly our own equipment and then gravel and such things needed for a job.
Construction materials?
Yes,
Are you required to have insurance?
yes.
What kind of insurance do you?
We carry an umbrella with, I'm not even sure, I think it has a $4 million umbrella plus covered what we need for our equipment.
As part of being an interstate motor carrier, are you subject to safety inspections?
Yes.
Have you ever had any accidents?
No.
Has Overtime Enterprises ever had any incidents? Does Overtime Enterprises work on projects throughout the proposed service area with empty roll-offs and seeking for,
Yes, mostly,
we have projects in Yellowstone County,
absolutely,
Muscle County,
yes,
Carbon,
yes,
Stillwater,
yes.
Golden Valley. Have you traveled through Golden Valley County?
Absolutely.
And are you familiar with the towns in Golden Valley County?
Yes.
What are, do you know these towns? Perfect. Do you believe that your work experience as owner operator of Overtime Enterprises is relevant to the proposed service that MT Roll-Offs wants to offer?
Absolutely.
How?
Just providing service to the communities as needed.
And as part of Overtime Enterprises operations, do you do safety training with yourself and employees?
Yes, we have, I mean, with DOT compliances, we have to have certain safety things in place.
Is Overtime Enterprises a profitable entity?
Yes,
Does it own assets?
yes.
Does it own any real property?
Overtime doesn't own any property. It owns equipment,
What kind of equipment?
excavators, dozers, dump trucks, straight trucks.
Has Overtime Enterprises ever obtained financing or loans to purchase equipment?
Yes,
Did you ever default on those at Overtime?
no,
Overtime ever obtain a line of credit?
yes,
Ever default on that?
No.
To your knowledge, does Overtime Enterprises have a good business credit score?
yes,
Personally, do you own any real property individually?
yes. And my wife,
Do you own some jointly with your wife? And
Yes.
some individually?
both,
Ever obtain personal financing or loans to purchase assets or real property?
yes,
Ever default on those?
No.
Have you ever filed for bankruptcy? How's your individual credit?
very good.
In your role operating Overtime Enterprises, have you ever used roll-off service from Mackenzie or Republic?
Both,
Does Overtime ever haul its own waste?
yes.
What facility does Overtime Enterprises use for disposal of its own waste?
City,
The landfill.
land,
How do you decide, or what's been your experience with the existing providers in Mackenzie and Republic in a service area for roll-off service?
There again, depending on times of the year, their busyness, we have had multiple discrepancies about trying to get them when we need them and the amount of them.
Specifically with Republic, has Overtime Enterprises experienced issues or
Problems with their roll-off service?
Yes.
What kinds of problems?
For instance, we schedule a time and we move equipment onto the job on the time that we expect there to be a roll off there, because the very first thing that needs to happen is, for instance, tearing down a house and taking out the foundation to replace it with a new house. And we move equipment to the job and roll offs don't show up, in turn pushes things down the line.
And what about Mackenzie? Have you experienced issues or problems with their roll-off service?
Yes, similar.
Similar issues, anything distinct or different or the same issues?
Basically, the not so much distinct on, I mean, the availability for sure, on the Republic's end of it, maybe more so just because of a call center that is not, I mean, locally orientated, I guess, that.
So tell me about that, when you call Republic Services to get roll-off service, who do you typically speak to?
I mean, I've talked to people in, as far as away from Phoenix, Arizona,
that they don't even know where Grand Avenue in Billings, Montana is, and when you're trying to explain a address that is brand new, they don't even know where to begin. And then, I mean, obviously nowadays we can drop a pin, but you can't do that on a landline.
Is Overtime Enterprises keeping track of each time there's an issue or a problem with roll-off service at a job site?
No, it's just still my own brain.
Why wouldn't you keep track of that? Do you not have time to do that?
Yes.
Do problems with the roll-off service impact Overtime Enterprises work on the job site?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, what I just said is that if we can't get started on time, and it just puts the whole job into a time crunch, and you have equipment and employees standing doing nothing.
Has Overtime Enterprises lost contracts as a result of these service issues with roll-off provider?
I would not say we've provided the service one way or another. We use our own side dumps. Just, you know,
So let's talk about that. When did you own a truck? A roll-off truck.
yes,
When did you buy that?
I believe it was early last spring.
And why did you buy it?
I had 5 demo projects to do, and I started on the very first one with lining up roll-offs from either Republic or McKinsey. And so did the general contractor, and they did not show up on the time we started. And so we finished that project with side dumps, and I purchased a roll-off truck and dumpsters because I had more work to do.
When you've used the existing providers for roll-off service, how much notice are you trying to give them before you start a job?
As much as I can, I mean, honestly, but typically it's within 2 to 3 weeks, and try to start with 1 or 2 dumpsters, but in the situations that we're in, that we have next week, you're sitting there, you pull up that dumpster, there's minutes, and you would like enough to follow up, and it's just not timely. It's working. And I have had that happen in the past. I mean, 5-10 years ago, we have had responses like that where we keep a truck for an entire day hauling the dumpsters.
Is that with the existing providers? Okay, so at one point, Republic or McKinsey were offering us a level of service different from what you're able to get now.
I believe as this town has grown, everything needs to grow.
In your experience, are there current roll-off service providers meeting the existing need in the proposed service area?
No,
Why not?
it's almost, I mean, in my brain, I mean, as a small business owner, it doesn't even make sense that, I mean, with the city of Billings, 3 people can even think they can provide enough service in this big of an area. It really makes.
Mr. Reynolds, how did you get involved with MT roll-offs in this application?
John and I ran into each other. I don't even know, it must have been small talk, and I told him that I bought a truck and was looking into getting into this thing. He in turn told me that he had applied for MT roll-offs as an entity, and then was actually at the bank. I think it was actually even the day of or the day after he'd been to a bank to get a loan, which he got approved for to buy a truck. He said, well, I got a deal.
Is Overtime own equipment that MT roll-offs will use if this application is approved? What kind of equipment?
We have an international hook lift truck, and by roll-offs that we've purchased already that we would, transfer ownership to, with a loan given by a bank or something to MT roll-offs and start an entity at that point, once we have the authority to do business.
And that truck, is that currently insured?
Yes.
And what size are the containers that Overtime provides? provide to energy roll-offs.
The ones we have right now are 30 hour.
Will you transfer ownership to energy roll-offs of those items if the application is approved or?
Yes, once there is a business to run there,
Right, why wouldn't you transfer it now?
there's no point. There's no way we can do business. I mean,
Well, what would happen if you transferred now, the application was denied?
I mean, what is the point? Yeah.
Who will be driving that truck initially for empty roll-offs if the application is successful?
Possibly me, maybe existing employees of overtime that have also agreed that if this thing goes through, that we have backup drivers, and it all depends on once we have an entity to chase.
Do you plan to acquire more trucks if the application is approved?
Absolutely.
Have you looked into what kind or what your options are?
I've actually already received quotes from Kenworth here in town, have exact specs,
And what's the quote on a new truck? Do you know?
250,000 roughly.
And how will empty roll-offs pay for that, you know?
I would say between John and I and some loans, we could very easily accommodate.
And there was some, Scott, you were here for Mr. Barron's testimony, you heard him talk about the quote that he received from Wastewood. If you're gonna get additional containers, how many containers are we talking about?
I think our initial purchase would be of 50 of them. I would love to have goals of, 100 of them in a year or maybe 2. I mean, it just, like we've talked, it all depends on what business needs as the business needs.
And have you talked to other providers besides Wastewood about?
Yes, the ones that I got personally for overtime was from five-star enterprises of Denver.
And what's the approximate cost of those?
6,500.
And how will you pay for those?
There again, loans and personal money.
If empty roll-off's application is unsuccessful, what will you do?
Unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Carry on business as we are, and probably appeal to do it again.
Is Overtime Enterprises engaged in any illegal hauling of Class D waste? Have you ever been accused of illegal hauling? If the application is successful, will you plan to operate year round?
Yes.
Is there any plan to sell the Class D certificate if MG Roll-offs gets it?
Absolutely.
Transfer it to somebody else? What will your role with MG Roll-offs be if this application is successful?
I would say daily operations, and I mean, I have a lot of experience in the trucking industry, and I've had them for many, many years. I work on it myself. I have very close contacts with mechanics, and very knowledgeable in the situation.
And if MG Roll-offs is successful with its application, will you continue to operate overtime?
Yes, I have one employee that is very hands-on and is running, and also my kids are getting of an age to where they're willing to step in.
Are you getting paid anything by MG Roll-offs, right?
No,
Are you billing hours or keeping track of hours that you work for MG Roll-offs right now? When you learned about, or how did you learn about this application process for hauling construction machinery?
I started calling, same as John, had made many phone calls, and in fact, the commissioner was one. But every single phone call I made, I had no idea why we couldn't haul her until John told me about it.
And does Overtime Enterprises, if a new competitor wants to start doing the same thing that Overtime Enterprises does, do you have an opportunity to protest or object to that? How do you do that? With Overtime Enterprises.
Was there an answer? I'm sorry.
What's the question?
Overtime Enterprises, do they have before a competitor enters the market, do they have an opportunity to protest
No.
or object?
No.
Is there any limitation on Overtime Enterprises competition?
No. That's about how I learned about it, how it worked.
How did,
So I was not sure how the whole garbage industry worked, but I was getting nervous about it because I had heard about another guy that got a cease letter. But I had bought this truck and I was not so sure what I was doing or if I was doing anything wrong. And I did walk into Republic's office on State Avenue and I talked to, I'm not even sure folks' names that was in there, but they said,
Objection. You're saying?
statement by you.
Can you clarify me, we talked to,
I do not have a specific name.
Was it just the first person who was there or somebody who asked for the manager or?
I walked downstairs and I asked for a manager and they just said, what can we help you with? And I simply asked the question.
What entity are we speaking about at this moment?
At this point, Overtime Enterprises.
Republic.
Republic.
Oh, Republic, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I think that since we've identified the person by title or position.
Withdrawn.
Yeah, thank you very much. Please go ahead.
So anyways, I walked into their office because I don't want to do illegal things. So I walked in and I said, what can I and can I not do? And they said, basically in layman's terms, if you load your own dumpster, you're completely okay. It's the second you drop it off and haul somebody else's garbage, at that point, my worry went away. That's what we've been doing and loading our own dumpsters.
I have no further questions for this witness this time.
I'll let the microphone to you, Mr. Cristal. Sir.
Okay.
Ms. Reynolds, you prefer Ms. Reynolds or Buckley?
But that's mine.
Sounds good. So I'm Luke Portello, resident of both. And I just want to walk you through some questions I have about some of the testimony you made and some of the plans you have for people on. So in general, you're here seeking a certificate allowing to roll-offs to transport construction waste and debris from construction sites using roll-off containers in Yellowstone carbon, distilled water, mussel shell, and golden milk. Correct? Yes. Okay. Now, and I think you were here for your business partners testimony already, but to go over this again, maybe you remember, it's Montana roll-offs has never held an interstate motor carrier authority a certificate. Correct? And in fact, Montana roll-offs was only organized in June 2022.
And I just want to object, it's MT roll-offs, just the letters. I don't want us to get confused on our period, so I.
Because there wasn't.
Try to remind
Sure,
us.
understood. I
Hold on just a second. Can you finish your objection?
I just want to remind Mr. Vasella that it's MT roll-offs.
Okay.
And hopefully we can fix that going forward.
Thank you for the clarification.
Especially seeing that there is an existing entity called Montana Roll-Offs, it's very important to specify, thank you.
I will try to be more clear and just so we're clear, but if I accidentally say Montana roll-offs, I actually mean MT roll-offs, the entity that you jump there and so on. So if I say it any other way, just know it's not intended to be anything.
Yep.
But again, thank you for the clarification. So MT roll-offs was only organized in June 23, correct?
Yes.
And MT roll-offs is owned, let's see, 51% by John Barron's and 49% by you, correct? Correct. Okay, no other members? The amended articles of organization of Montana Secretary of State govern who owns MT roll-offs, how it's controlled and how it operates, correct? Okay. And that was amended in January of this year, 2024, to include you as a secretary, correct?
Yes.
Right, and those articles show that the company is member managed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you are the minority member with less than 50%, correct? Okay, but you claim to be the company's managing member. Correct.
Correct.
Okay. But there's no written agreement between you and Mr. Barron's that's going to govern how this business will be managed, correct?
Correct.
And the business does not have a business plan?
We have spoke personally to each other about one, but we have not written anything up due to lack of needing a business.
Okay, so at this time, as we sit here today, there is no business, correct? Okay. There's nothing we can review today that shows that Montana Roll-Offs knows how it will manage its affairs, correct? Correct. So MT Roll-Offs, the business, again, not you personally, does not have any experience on garbage, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it would be fair to say that the business's experience is dependent on your and Mr. Barrett's personal.
Excuse me, let me say, you just introduced something totally brand new when you said hauling garbage. We're not talking about garbage right here, we're talking about construction waste. Garbage is an entirely different category.
Thank you. Experience hauling construction waste and debris. To be clear.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So it would be fair to say that the business's experience is dependent on your and Mr. Barron's personal experience, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're going to be currently, you're the only employee of MT Roll-Offs, correct?
That is how it is written now.
So if you can turn to exhibit B, I think we can.
Yes.
Okay. So MT Roll-Offs has no other employees, correct?
Correct.
And currently, the business is completely reliant on you to haul construction waste and debris if the PSC granted the certificate, correct?
I believe in the time that once the number or the PSC agrees that we can authorize and have authority to haul debris.
Let me.
We will take our time.
To make sure to make it clear for you to answer. As we sit here today, you are the sole employee of MT Roll-Offs.
Yes.
Okay. And so as we sit here today, if the PSC grants your certificate, the business is completely reliant on you to haul the construction waste and debris, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if you were sick or injured, the business would not have any experienced employees to drive its only truck, correct?
If you want to talk like this, yes.
Well, I don't want to talk about it, so I'm asking you the question. If, as we sit here today, you were, okay,
Yes.
so you were the only employee.
Yes.
And you have a CDL, I think I heard you testify before, correct?
Yes.
So you'd be able to drive a truck for the company, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but if you were sick or injured, the business would not have any experienced employees to drive it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Assuming that the business would hire more employees. Well, let me start with everything. Is it fair to say that the company is expecting to hire more employees?
Yes.
Okay, but as of right now, there's no job applications that you've received from one.
No need.
No, okay. So it's uncertain whether or not those prospective employees in the future will be experienced.
Yes.
Okay. And you'd agree that safety is critically important when operating heavy machinery, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, especially on job sites when people can't be, when people are constantly moving around?
Yes.
Okay. Especially when driving heavy loads on public roads? Right. But MT roll-offs currently has no safety training plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's change gears a little bit, no pun intended, let's change gears a little bit, talk about the investment that's been made in MT roll-offs. As we sit here today, you have not made any financial investments in MT roll-offs.
Correct.
Okay, neither you nor Mr. Behrens have made any contribution at all to MT roll-offs. Correct?
Correct.
So, again, as we sit here today, MT roll-offs has no property whatsoever, correct?
Correct.
Okay. MT roll-offs expects to initially perform Class B services using overtime. We call it the hook truck before, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I heard you say, in your direct testimony a moment ago that you had looked at a new truck quote, or you received a new truck quote, for $250,000, is that correct?
It was rough, yes.
Approximately
Yeah.
$250,000. But that, just to be clear, that quote hasn't been disclosed in this matter thus far, correct? Okay. For the truck that you have disclosed, that truck is not going to be permanently located in any of the counties in which MT roll-off operates, correct?
Say that again?
So the truck that Overtime Enterprises currently owns, which I think you said you intend to allow MT roll-offs to use. That truck,
Purchase.
sorry,
Purchase.
okay, that truck will not be permanently located in any of the counties in which MT roll-offs would operate. Right,
Permanently located and based out of Yellowstone County.
okay, can you turn to exhibit D for a moment? It's in the line right there in front of you, you just pull the tab to D. And look at the top of page 5. So the question was posed to MT roll-offs, and I'll just read from the top and tell me if I read it correctly. It says list all equipment of MT roll-offs located on a permanent basis in each of the following counties: Yellowstone, Carbon, Stillwater, and County. And MT roll-offs answer, supplemental answer, excuse me, the bundle page says A, none. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so the truck will not be permanently located in any of the counties where MT roll-offs engines operate, correct?
I'm gonna object because he's testified that it will be in Yellowstone County, so if there's inconsistencies, and I guess you think that's a credibility issue, if that's Mr. Purcell's point, but the testimony is written
I mean, the truck's gonna be somewhere.
in Yellowstone County.
That is the question. I think the question is to clarify, because previously you said it's not going to be here, and I hear you saying it's here. I'm just trying to clarify which is correct.
Well, I believe it'll be one of those counties, yes.
Okay. So. Well, sorry.
So,
I don't think there's been a ruling on it.
yeah, I was gonna say, so, yeah, I think I'm gonna overrule the objection, on here, so go ahead. But bear in mind that what he's testified to, is what he's going to testify to. He's already spoken to, so if you just not be repetitive on the questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Yep, no, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much. NT roll-off expects to initially perform Class D services using overtimes, I believe 30 and 40 yard roll-offs, is that correct?
We have all 30.
All 30s, okay. So looking back at exhibit D, back at page 5, I'm now looking at your answer to 6B. I'll read this out loud. Montana roll-offs will initially use one truck in 2008. Work starts 7,500 with a stellar slider, hook lift bed, 4 40-yard roll-off containers, then 30-yard roll-off. Did I read that correctly?
Yes,
Okay, so that's no longer the case, is that correct?
I guess I'm not sure where that was a business plan that we put together. I don't know what that is, but I mean, we have 5 30-yard roll-up.
Okay, so as it's spread out, 5 30-yard roll-up containers, nothing else other than this. Okay, thanks. Montana roll-off, excuse me, MT roll-offs, will be either leasing or buying this equipment from Overtime Enterprises.
Correct.
Okay. And, MT roll-offs costs for that equipment would impact its profits, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But currently, there's no written lease between the two entities, is that correct?
No need for one.
Okay, and there's no purchase order?
No.
Okay, so we can't be sure, as we sit here today, how that lease or purchase is going to affect MP roll-off's ability to operate, correct?
Well, if you could tell me the outcome of this hearing.
No, so let me, that's what he ended. So there's no written lease, correct?
No release.
Okay, there's no purchase order.
No purchase order.
Okay, so without those to determine what cost is going to be for MP roll-offs, there's no way that we can know today how that purchase from Overtime Enterprises or its lease from Overtime Enterprises would affect MP roll-offs' ability to operate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. MP roll-off doesn't currently have a casualty other insurance policy, correct?
No.
And there's nothing we can review today that would show that MP roll-offs can afford the necessary insurance, correct? Okay, just to confirm, Overtime Enterprises doesn't list MP roll-offs as like an additional insurer or anything on any of its policies, right? So it's not currently covered, MP roll-offs, excuse me, it's not currently covered by Overtime insurance, okay. Let's talk about the equipment a little bit. So MT roll-offs originally expected to acquire 10 additional roll-off containers of the certificate was renewed, correct?
I believe that if we are granted the number, we would start with more than just 10, so.
Okay, and I think, yeah, I think I heard you say, you know, potentially up to 50 that you can be purchasing, okay. MT roll-offs has received the quote originally for those 10, and it sounds like maybe a second quote for the 50.
I mean, we probably use who we've used in the past, or who I used in the past. And
Okay, who did you use in the past?
it was that, I think, 5-star Enterprises or something was out of big. That way, all the dumpsters would match.
Okay, so there was an original quote for the 10 roll containers.
Yes.
And then you've received a second quote from this other company for additional roll containers, right?
Similar costs, similar stuff.
Similar costs, similar stuff, but we haven't received you haven't disclosed that second quote for the roll containers, correct? No. Okay. The original quote containers were quoted cost over what, 64,000, I think?
Correct.
Okay, and this new quote, did I hear you say 6,400 per container? Did I mishear you?
Yeah, that's correct.
About that, so even more expensive than the original, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, 'cause the original quote was like 2,600 around.
yes, I was going to add.
The quote is the same price.
I think we added the plus because it'd be able to do both roll up and.
Okay, I'm not trying to mischaracterize the testimony.
Let me overrule this, you can cover this cross exam, I mean, it can be. Just for later, I mean, sure, why you're pursuing this.
But you know, but I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, to be clear, right? You know, if it's the same quote, it's the same quote, I'm just trying to get sense for it. Okay. The original quote's no longer valid, correct? And we have no quote that we can review today that shows that there's a valid existing.
No need for one.
Okay. So there's nothing we
Excuse
can.
me 1 minute here, I was just communicating with Commissioner Lukacek, who was auditing this. Have you had any difficulty hearing anyone? She says muffled significantly sometimes, usually audible perception adequate. So in particular, you're a very soft spoken guy, and can you make sure that?
I just didn't know if it was mine that was making all that racket.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not sure where we left off on.
There was no need for one, and then there is nothing that, talking about a quote.
Yep, so just to finish up that thought, there's nothing we can review today that will show whether or not Montana laws could afford containers, correct? Correct. In your amended application, MT roll-offs said, you know, and I'm quoting here, due to the unique and changing circumstances of construction job sites, shippers need a roll-off provider with a quick response time, flexible scheduling, and ability to adapt to individual shipper needs, correct? Correct. empty roll-offs intends to start operations with 5 of overtime's roll-off. Correct?
Yes,
And you intend to rent out more than one at a time, correct?
yes,
Okay.
first come, first served.
First come, first served, so if you had 5 customers, that would take all. And I think we were sitting here for Mr. Barron's testimony earlier, do I understand that you'd be renting out to them to multiple containers to one customer?
Possibly, but I mean, with that, this business isn't going to start. We will have a period of time to get set up.
Sure.
Order.
My question was, sorry, you would be willing to rent more than one dumpster?
Yes.
To one customer, okay, and that's because they might need multiple dumpsters for their recycling of different types of materials, is that correct?
Possibly in job sizes from, length of jobs to.
Sure. So you would use the one truck. If the certificate's granted today, you have a one truck use, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if that one truck is in use, you wouldn't really have flexibility, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If that one truck is in use, you would not really have the ability to adapt, correct?
I'm sure we could figure something out.
Okay. And if that one truck is in use, the customers would just wait, correct? So,
If I could ask you to speak more clearly.
Sorry.
Correct.
Your application includes all points and places in Yellowstone, Carbon, Stillwater, Russell, Shell, and Valley counties, correct?
Correct.
So as an example, if you have customers in Roundup, Red Lodge, and Nye that all need service, you'd be limited in your ability to adapt to their needs, correct?
As of today.
As of today, okay? And because regardless of when they need service, you'll only have one truck to respond, correct?
As of today, yes.
Okay. And that truck can only travel so fast, correct?
Correct.
Alright. And that's especially true if there can be multiple roll-offs at one time.
Right.
Now, I believe you submitted 3 months, empty roll-offs and submitted 3 affidavits along with the amended application, correct?
Correct.
And if I looked at them, I believe it's Morgan Contractor LLC, Allen Homes, DBA Big Sky Lawn and Snow, and Josh Leader, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and each of those affidavits claim that they need transportation construction lease, correct?
I'm not so sure with those, honestly.
We can review it if you'd like to. So,
But yes, that's what they're here for.
okay. So just to be clear, none of those affidavits claim that they need recycling, right?
Correct.
Okay, I believe you've already admitted that you did C, so go ahead and flip to exhibit C. Look at the page mark MT roll and then sold that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the MT roll. If you look at the section on empty roll 00001, 0011, excuse me, so empty roll 11. The section titled business purpose. Can you read it? What's there?
Where are you talking?
Business, the purpose, it's about 4 lines down.
Okay, recycling, yes.
Recycling. And you would agree that the purpose of the company does not include any reference to construction waste and debris hauling, correct? Okay. You've already agreed with me that empty roll-offs is bound by the terms of its organization, correct? So anything else would be beyond the purpose of the LLC, correct?
Correct.
And if you would be recycling what empty roll-offs picks up, that would further limit your flexibility to respond to customer needs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's move on a little bit to the idea of whether or not there's need So in your amended application, NT Ross said there's ample evidence that public needs exist for additional Class E construction waste and debris carrier utilizing roll-off containers to serve construction
Can you
sites.
slow down just a minute?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. I had too much coffee this morning. Where did you leave off? And I'll just start there.
That public need exists for,
Got it, sorry. Public need exists for an additional Class E construction waste and debris carrier utilizing roll-off containers to serve construction sites in Yellowstone, Carbon, Stillwater, Muscle Shoals, and Golden Mountains. Correct?
Correct.
But you've not actually received any requests for service for CNG services, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I think you've made a couple of claims regarding delay that I want to go. The first is, and I'm quoting, "Can contractors working in the proposed service area face unreasonably long delays for roll-off container delivery, pickups, and retrieval?" Is that correct?
Correct.
And the second is contractors are forced to wait weeks for pickup from job sites and container delivery and retrieval from the current service providers, correct?
Correct.
And the third, myself and many other contractors are waiting a month or more to get a roll-off container. We are waiting longer times to get them done, is that correct?
Correct.
But other than those 3 shipper affidavits that you provided, you don't have any documents to support those claims, correct?
Correct.
So there's no emails,
I personally,
right? No letters? No. Okay, no complaints from customers regarding delay?
nothing in writing, no.
Okay, no citations from the city or county for garbage piling up at work site?
No.
Okay. You agree that Republic can meet public need, correct?
I didn't believe that.
Okay, so could I just look to exhibit C again, please? Response to question 13A. You're gonna be looking at page 10. Okay, so if I look at the top 13A, about halfway through that paragraph, I'm gonna read this out loud to you. It starts with Republic, obviously. Republic obviously has the resources to meet this need. Did I read that part correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So, to be clear, it can, correctly?
Jack, to form of the question, because that's not what the response says. Testimony is not matching up to it. So, I'm gonna object because I think he's trying to impeach Mr. Reynolds, based on a statement that he doesn't say what he thinks.
Ms. Garrett, your voice trails off to me, so.
I'm gonna object to the form of the question. It's vague, and to the extent he's attempting to impeach Mr. Reynolds, I don't believe there's a discrepancy there.
I rephrase.
Okay, let me rephrase and try again. You agree the Republic has the resources to meet the public need, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, the only documents you have to support that claim that the public cannot meet public need are your 3 shipper affidavits, correct?
Personal experience? Yes.
Let me make sure that the answer is clear. The only documents you have that we can review today that support your claim that the Republic cannot meet public need are your 3 shipper affidavits, correct?
Right.
I think I heard you say earlier that Republic has in the past been able to meet your need by having a truck available all day. Is that correct?
In the past.
In the past, okay. And would it surprise me to know that Republic still has that service available?
I'm sure they have that service available.
Okay, so Republic still has the ability to provide that service that you previously found acceptable, is that correct?
I'm sure they have that.
So would it surprise you to know that this service area that you're applying for includes about 10,000 square miles?
Absolutely.
It would surprise you?
No, it does not.
Does not surprise you? Okay. And it's about, and I'm approximating 6.5% of the entire state of Montana. 1 out of every 15 square miles? Okay, so would you agree that these 5 counties presenting a service area,
I'm sorry, present a what service?
a rather large service area.
Absolutely.
Would it surprise you to know that Yellowstone County is the Montana county with the most residents?
It's not surprising.
Not surprising, okay, over 170,000 residents.
And I'm gonna object to this line of questioning, facts, not evidence in council's testimony.
This is a matter of public record, and the commission can take judicial notice of these facts. These are census data facts.
And I haven't seen any census data produced, and so if they
It's-
produce that, we can discuss that.
It's publicly available. There's no need to increase publicly available. data.
Then there's also no need to ask the witness these questions either.
Commissioner, if I might be allowed to respond. So I am not attempting to validate whether or not these facts are correct in terms of the number of people in each county. But these questions are going to be directly related to one of the elements which the PSC considers when determining whether or not to grant a permit. Specifically in this case, the market data.
Overruled.
Thank you. So to circle back quickly, it wouldn't surprise you to know there's over 170,000 people in Yellowstone County.
No.
Okay, and would it surprise you to know that Golden Valley County is among the least populated of Montana counties?
No.
Okay, just over 800 residents.
Yeah.
With these differences in mind, would you agree that this 5-county area presents some pretty complex needs?
For sure.
Okay. Now, to be clear, you haven't conducted any analysis of your empty roll-offs, estimated or expected revenues if the certificate is granted, correct? Okay. You haven't conducted any analysis about your expected profits if this certificate is granted?
No.
Okay. There's no analysis we found in the business plan, and we've talked about this already?
No.
Okay. You're not an economist, right? You're not an economist, correct? Okay, and you have no formal training in finances, correct? And you have not participated in the garbage hauling industry before this? The construction waste and debris industry. You've not conducted any analysis about what impact your business would have on the current market at all, correct?
No.
Okay, would it surprise you to know that conducting those kind of analyses, operational market analyses, is an expectation of the PSC?
I'm gonna object because that's not what the order says. And we can make legal arguments about this, but I don't think it's also calls for justification. And so I'm gonna object to this line of question.
I'm not asking for a conclusion, I'm asking if you would be surprised if this would be an expectation.
And this is also outside the scope of direct.
Commissioners, I might make this easy if it's possible. If this is outside the scope of direct, I'm happy to withdraw the question.
Okay, there may be a better witness for these things later on. Thank you for withdrawing.
Let's move on with it. All right, let's talk about your company for a little bit, Overtime Enterprises. You founded the company, I think I heard earlier.
Yes.
It's got a number of trucks, I think you said 3 or 4.
We have 2 dump trucks and 3 street trucks.
Okay. It's got 3 commercial drivers, did I get that right?
Yeah, myself and 2.
You and 2 others, okay. It sounds like over time, they have a fair amount of experience driving and transporting things, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, but over time, to be clear, it's not a construction waste and debris company. You've been in business through overtime for quite some time, correct? And you'd agree it's important to be safe when operating large machinery. We talked about this.
Correct.
Okay, including large trucks, correct? So, and that's because those large trucks would pose a risk both to the operator and the public if they weren't safely operated, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And for the same reasons, it's important that the operators of those trucks follow the law.
Yes.
Okay, and that would apply equally both the trucking and the construction waste and debris hauling industry, correct?
Yes.
Now, you regularly haul construction waste and debris from job sites for overtime?
Not regularly, as we need for ourselves,
Okay, so maybe from time to time?
time to time.
Okay. And that's something you do through overtime, correct, not personally, not through yourself?
I mean, if I have my own personal stuff, we do all of this.
Okay. When overtime is working on these job sites, are there other contractors that are working there at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, do those contractors ever put their construction waste and debris in your roll-off containers?
Not sure.
Okay, fair enough, let's move on. We've talked a little bit about exhibit D before, if you can flip to exhibit D. I'm looking at I'm looking at pages 3 and 4. Start at page 3. You there? Okay, so in question, if you look in question 3, F and G, you were asked to provide and put in a list of criminal arrests, citations, and convictions for the members, managers, and employees of MT Roll-Offs, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you're a member of the company, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you're a managing member, correct?
Yes.
So you're also an employee, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and now they turn to page mark 4. Can you read your response to F?
Should be good. None?
Okay, and how about for your response to G?
No.
Okay, and are those correct? Okay, so I grabbed paper. Turn some over to your turn.
We take a break. After we get back.
Yes, we'll operate for 5 minutes. Thank you. The time is 12:15. We're back on the record. Mr. Purcell, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Reynolds, when we left off, I believe you had said you had answered no to AWS 3F and G, right?
Yes, but I also, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm handing you a document, and I'll hand it here in just a moment. I'm handing you a document that's marked on the top. And as an affidavit filed in the district court of the 13th judicial district. I'll pass this out to everybody else, so be just a moment. So I just passed out my copy. Sorry. Do you
I'm
recommend?
gonna object to this line of questioning. I mean, I think the appropriate question to Mr. Reynolds is, do you have arrest citations and convictions? You know, and then if he says no, then this evidence for rebuttal will come in. That question hasn't been asked, Mr. Reynolds.
I disagree. We asked this question in the written data requests that provided an answer. I just asked Mr. Buckley if he could confirm that answer, and he did, in the affirmative, confirm that those were his answers provided in the data requests. So now I'd like to address those answers.
Yeah, I think that is appropriate. The question, I think you're talking, just have you been arrested? Okay, so I think that for the fairness of the record, it would be to say what the outcome of that arrest was. Okay. Introducing one half of it is, I think, would be prejudicial without giving a resolution to the whole.
From my perspective, he's here to testify. If you want to ask him a question, certainly do so.
Okay.
And then if he lies about it, then you can impeach him.
Sure. Okay, very well. So your written answers being what they are, have you been arrested before?
Yes,
Okay, so the answers you provided in your written discovery are not correct.
correct.
Okay. You were arrested for DUI, correct?
I was,
Okay. And the arresting officer attempted to have you perform a field sobriety test, correct?
correct,
And you refused to take that test, correct?
correct,
In fact, you refused to take any tests, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you were arrested and brought to the police station, is that correct?
correct,
And at the police station, you continued to refuse to submit to a sobriety test, correct?
correct,
Including a breath test.
yes,
So you were arrested and refused to cooperate with law enforcement, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You refused to take a test that would have proved that you were not endangering the public, correct?
correct,
And you chose not to disclose that in this matter, correct?
correct.
Okay.
I actually did talk to my lawyer about it.
So you talked to your attorney about whether or not you were arrested in this matter?
No, I told her that I had I think they called it a per se. When it was all done.
You just took it, please. Speak up if you
I
will.
believe they called it a per se after it was completed.
Okay,
After I had gone through the proper channels of getting it taken care of.
okay, so just to make sure I got this, you did disclose to your attorney that you had been arrested.
That I had this per se, that I was believed that I didn't even know that there was, I do not believe it on my record that I have a DUI. I think it was called a per se.
I understand, and to be clear, I'm not asking you if you were convicted of a DUI. I am asking you if you were arrested, and I think you said yes, is that correct? And I'm now asking you, did you inform your attorney in this matter you had been arrested?
No.
Okay. So to be clear, you want the commission to believe what you said here today, correct?
Correct.
And you want them to believe you haven't hidden anything else, correct?
Correct.
but they're just going to have to rely on your word.
Yes.
Okay. Hang on further.
Thank you. Let us take the opportunity for lunch break at this time. So there was a request on behalf of accommodation for witness on LH. Warren, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Is that convenient for that person to come today? Is it too out of order to have that person give their testimony right after lunch?
I would need to contact her. I don't believe it'd be a problem for her to come quickly. She's
Or would it be more appropriate until this witness is completely finished?
probably for this witness to complete his testimony, but then we can have her testify. And again, her testimony will be very brief.
That would be fine. Okay. So people going out and getting lunch, whatever, is an hour sufficient? Okay, an hour sufficient, so we will resume back on the clock at let's say 1:25. Thank you. Off the record.